Hello everyone, welcome back to the Comprehensive Guide to Support. Today we will be talking about Cthulhu, one of my absolute most favorite characters to play. Now why... This is a really interesting situation here. Why am I going with Cthulhu? Because this isn't accidental. I actually wasn't planning on doing Cthulhu as an episode yet. But the instant I saw the Nike here with the potential as the theoretic carry, I kind of feel like the Morbin and Brett 26 might be together and they're just going to switch. I'm not sure, but the fact that I'm nervous about it indicates that maybe I should be a Guardian who can bring some ranged oomph to the lane. All right, or at least to help boost Nike to the point where she can effectively combat whoever their ADC is, probably Tribdis. So now we have to have that conversation. So Cthulhu is, as I just said, a bit higher in damage than your average support, and at first glance it doesn't really look like he'd be terribly supporty. And in some ways I can understand why people would think that, but let's first talk about the abilities here, because a lot of people are going to start with the Mire. That's not the first move. The first move is always Sanity Break. Just because you break it out faster, it's just a much faster item. Now, even with my desire to splash in some damage here, we're going to splash that in at the end. So we're going to start with Sentinel's Gift. The enemy team has a pretty strong comp here. Now, Cthulhu, and I'm going to get into this, not that. I'm going to get into this in a bit here. But what we're talking about with Cthulhu is a variety of very interesting things going on. What am I going to want as my initial move? Should probably get Cloak of Meditation. Actually, there's a specific reason you want Cloak first. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. So Cthulhu's ult increases his maximum health by 20%. So it's really beneficial for Cthulhu to build more than the average amount of health than even most Guardians would go for. I would also like to point out that Cthulhu is extremely mana intensive. Okay? He's very mana intensive. So my second item, whatever that's going to wind up being, is going to have to be something with MP5 in most situations. But we are going to... I goofed that. Here we go. And then there we go. I actually need to be taking this. Now, again, as with most situations here, we are going to be wanting to use the Hog on this wave. Although Cthulhu doesn't need to. I'm only more doing this to out of habit. But in this particular situation, I probably didn't necessarily need that. I probably could have gotten away with some mana potions. Get some poke there. Keep on poking. Lure those minions in. That's fine. Now, Cthulhu has this unusual ability to clear really well because his auto-attack chain does include that third hit. We're going to grab the Mire second because this is going to slow and root enemies, which is really great for getting some damage here. Now we're just going to go on ahead and splash him there. That's actually really fantastic. Now, why did I want, because I'm going to talk about this now, why did I very specifically want Meditation first? Well, Meditation heals based on a percentage of health and mana. Since we're, looking to increase our maximum mana anyways as Cthulhu, it makes more sense to bust out Meditation. So not only can you heal your allies, but you heal yourself a little extra as well, which can really help you as the support, because obviously you're going to be taking some strong amounts of damage here. And this is why Gauntlet of Thieves, already a strong item for Guardians, is particularly powerful on Cthulhu. Again, we just have to really keep a close eye on our mana usage, and that's why I'm really not using a ton of mana here on clearing the wave. It's because, generally speaking, it's not going to do me that much good. And this is actually why you will almost always, as a support Cthulhu, build Sentinel's Gift. Because without Sentinel's Gift, you're going to run out of mana so fast, it'll make your head spin. You can't afford that, and neither can your ADC. Let's just be really honest. I was hoping to catch Charybdis in that a little bit here. We're going to actually have to kill the minion wave here and hit level 3. but that's fine. Now, a lot of people accuse Cthulhu of not being a true support, or at least, well, that's less common now. Back in the day, they used to call him a fake support because of how potentially damaging his abilities were. And I can understand where they're coming from. He hits pretty damn hard for a support. Absolutely. That was double warding we did not need. But if you actually take a look at his abilities, they all have really powerful secondary effects here. We've got damage mitigation increase. We've got attack speed slow on this, on his first ability. The Mire slows and roots. His third ability, his dash, that has the ability to push the enemy there, just like this. And these are all great little effects to have as a support. Now we're just going to go ahead and use med here. And then whenever you hit somebody with the sanity break, when they have a certain low sanity, they do less damage to you as well. So that's always really nice to see as well. That also causes the fear effect in them, so that's a fun time. So there's actually a lot of support. Now, his ult is a completely different story. I do want to talk about that very specifically, because his ult is a totally different story that does require conversation. And that is a very important conversation to have. But his baseline kit is actually very supportive, even if it doesn't look like it at first glance, because no one really is seeing the actual active effects. Now, I could use my ult here. I'm not going to, for the very specific reason I don't have the mana to. This is the point at which you're going to have a really rough time with mana, because Cthulhu's ult uses mana. You basically transform into Giga Cthulhu, and that Giga Cthulhu, everything he does, well, not everything he does, but a lot of what he does requires large amounts of mana investment. And we don't have the mana for that right now. Is Geb still there? Or no? There's Geb. Okay, I was really concerned that he'd rotated before I was ready to. And now, I'm staying in lane a little longer than normal, very specifically because this is a Nike we have here. I'm very concerned about her ability to combat Tribdis in the future. Melee ADCs, and I'm using that term loosely here, typically don't play very well against ranged ADCs, which is why most people play ranged ADCs. It's just incredibly difficult in that 1v1 for a melee person to beat out the just range of the ranged person. It is basically what it comes down to. It's just very difficult for that to happen. Now, you might be wondering, Professor, why are you increasing the Mire instead of Sanity Break? Well, there's very specifically one reason. It does reach the wave a little bit better, which is good for me because right now I'm trying to help Nike clear the wave. It's also your primary ranged ability, so it's the best move you've got for dealing some crowd control at a safe range. It's also your classic setup move because it does root the enemy, it does slow the enemy, so that's going to give you the ability to actually get into a position where you can deal with that and actually gets the rest of your crowd control and support down. Is basically what's going on here. Just going to go ahead and use med really quick. I don't want her to leave yet. We have a really rare opportunity at this point. And now what I'm going to do is come over here and help defend mid. Because at this point, Geb is over here, and I'm actually prepared to leave. Now that Nike has the benefit of that extra wave over Tribdis, I think possibly, well, Tribdis just bounced that out really quick, but originally I was fairly comfortable with that idea. A little less so now. I'm actually going to go back really quick, because right now there's a full minion wave, so Raijin isn't going to need me here. I want gauntlets, and then my very next move is going to very specifically be something that gives me some pretty serious MP5. I'm actually going to be going for the silver breastplate. I'm going to wait a couple of seconds for this. It's not really that long of a time to wait. Raijin is going to die, but he was going to die anyways. No, he actually made it. And there was not really going to be able to... I wasn't going to be able to do anything about that regardless, so... And we're just going to stroll on in here as Danzaburo comes in. We're going to have to try to save... Okay, that's huge for Nike. She built Golden Blade. Alright, that's probably how she got away with that. She did not act at all the way I thought she was going to be honest. Nope. I'll be honest, I did not expect her to stick on him that hard. Alright, so we're just gonna let Raijin do his wave clear. I'm not gonna use mana. I'm not gonna do anything but just spectate as I build my little stacks. What does he got? He has 24 stacks. He's a little ahead of me in stacks. But I'm ahead of him in gold, which is absolutely fantastic. Probably because of that early pressure we put on. And now at this point we're going to go ahead and increase the rushing terror. Now you might be wondering, why am I going for the increase in damage? I don't normally advocate this. Well, this does again partially go back to the Nike situation. I am rather concerned about that, so I want to increase my early to mid-game damage as much as possible. And that's a big part of that. Secondly, the attack speed debuff increase on Sanity Break really doesn't mean much this early in the game because they really don't have high enough attack speed where that's going to make a big impact. I mean, even all the way up to a 30% attack speed decrease really doesn't mean anything this early on in the game. And there's not really much I was going to be able to do about that. And unfortunately, I wasn't really able to get an opportunity to talk about the ult there. But that's okay. We have... You goofed that one, didn't you? We're just going to go ahead and poke this wave here. And hope... No. There we go. Thank you. I'm going to let him clear this so I can get my stacks. There we go. Okay. Going to get some poke here. Make sure Iset doesn't attack too aggressively here. Not sure what Gibbs' plan here is. He's just poking? Okay. Interesting. Now we're going to go on ahead and meditate on this. He's going a little too hard on this. That was still good. Where's Bastet? That's my next question. Alright, as long as we're... Good. No. Oh, wait. We're going to make this? We're going to make this. We're not going to make this. Oh, we did. Okay. Then we have Tribus over here. Which figures. Nope. Not today, Zerg. Nope. Shouldn't have done that. Nice play, nice play. We're going to go back now. Increase ult. That was a very close call for us. We're going to grab our Breastplate of Valor. We're not going to get the glyph yet on this because I'm not sure if this is necessarily the one I want to get a glyph with. Now, we also have to address the potential issue here of anti-heal. Will we need anti-heal? Short answer is probably. With Iset's ult, Charybdis has Death's Toll, so there's a distinct possibility there. Bastet has Soul Eater. Kuzenbo has Bancrofts. Yeah, I think we're gonna there's enough healing in that team composition right now for us to have Pestilence. We're gonna probably we have a couple of interesting options we can pull. I'm not sure if my last item is gonna be Soul Reaver or Divine Ruin. Just make sure she backs off there. That was a good move. No, we're not gonna do this. She's going to walk right into that for some reason. She's going to walk right into that for some reason. go. Now I'm trying to wait for him to do his roll, but we're going to do this first. We're going to push him back towards my allies, and there he goes. He dies. I was waiting for him I was waiting to use my push until he used his dash, his roll, specifically because I wanted to interrupt it, because that will at the early stage, but he didn't use it for some reason, so that was kind of odd. That's not really a threat here. I just wanted to stall her out there. I'm going to go ahead and gank this. She went the wrong way. I'm assuming she's going to jump. Yep. And looks like we're going to be able to pick up something here. Yeah, we're going to be able to pick up... I'll pick her up by accident. Alright, that's fine. That was an interesting choice. No, you back off. We're good. We're good. So we won that battle primarily due to the fact that we just forced a lot of them back past where they normally would be. See, he's going to keep on pressing this for some unholy reason. I'm fine with this because the instant that she dives back in, I'm going to have a conversation with her about our Lord and Savior Cthulhu. Hi, how you doing? I don't have the mana for this. Alright, let's talk about these. Now, you'll notice that this is reducing protections. This heals allies. You can go back and pause the video if you want to read those fully. You'll notice that only really the second one technically doesn't have any supporting on it, at least in terms of those words. But it actually has a pop-up, so it's very useful even in that regard. Despite that, so he actually is, again, fairly supportive, but almost nobody actually knows about these supportive effects because nobody actually stops to read that. I actually did read those abilities through myself using this method of actually, I just recorded a video ulted in jungle practice, and then I just, once I had read that, you know, once I'd recorded the words, I just, honestly, I just watched the video that I'd recorded. And now we gotta go over here and try to save Nike. She doesn't need saving. Hello. Oh, that was a good interrupt. Now, we're already over here, so we're just gonna help Nike take this tower at this point in time. You know what? The hell with it. Let's go. And there we go. Now, we're going to retreat because there's nothing else to fight for at this particular point in time. There really isn't. I would die to, probably Tribus at this point, because I'm not in great health. I could use my, why am I having a brain cramp? Meditation. But that would be kind of a waste to just use it on myself. Alright. Oh, we're committing hard on this. Okay. That's a conversation to have. Nope. Nope, that's fine, but I want to just take a look at this again. Protection reductions. Blast the psychic energy that pops them up. It's a good time. It's a lot supportier than you would think. He's dead. His Danzaburdo is too aggressive. I can't believe he survived that. Alright. Let's see if we can save his life right here. She played that really well. Oh, here's Geb. We're gonna get out of here. Not because I am afraid Geb is going to kill me. I just don't want him shielding the, person I'm trying to kill. Who's coming in? Oh, probably the enemy solo laner. That's fine. Just gonna go ahead and poke out this wave really quick, and then I'm gonna back off. Oh, hello. You're coming in kind of hard at this. Let's poke you out here. Loki is still missing his landing opponent, so I have no idea where the hell they are, which is kind of concerning. That's okay. Danzabutter was way too aggressive. He's doing really well despite it, but he's just way too aggressive. We're going to grab Pestilence here. Now, at this particular point, we've got a couple of different options on what we could pick up. At this particular point in time... Well, first, I want Blink. Second off, I'm kind of leaning towards... You know what? I'm not sure yet, so we're just going to leave that alone for now. I'm not 100% sure where I want to take my build at this time. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. They're not terribly tanky. Kuzumbo is, but... Well, Geb is too, I guess. No. I could see... Can gank this. No, they just all backed off. Where did Charybdis go? Hello. There we go. That was a mistake on her part. She shouldn't have tried that with, him having his ult up still. Uset walks right into that. Did you see that back there? And then we're just going to make sure she dies. Or not, as it turns out. Oh, wait. Gonna go ahead and use this for once on myself, just because it's gonna help me get out of here. No, you don't. Not today. So we took the mid tower there, which was the main goal there. I didn't get to kill Iset. I wouldn't normally go that hard on that, but I was fairly confident I wasn't gonna die. The Charybdis going after Danzabutter towards the end there was a bit of a surprise, but he was able to handle that, fortunately. I caught on to that a little too late. For my personal comfort. But again, it turned out okay, so... Does he have his ult? Because that's the only way he's gonna... Yeah, he does have his ult. He could have caught up to her. Nope. Get your cat out of here. Alright, that was interesting. Hello. Oh, that was a waste. I'm dead, yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised Geb got the kill, which is actually good, because he can't really do anything with that, but that's fine. Let me see. What do I really want here? In terms of items. I'm not sure. I have an unusually aggressive solo lane. I have an idea on this, actually. But what we're going to do first is we're going to grab... We don't need to surrender. We're not far enough behind for that. We're going to grab first is some tasty little cooldowns. We're going to grab Pridwin first, is what we're going to do. So we're going to go ahead and get that. That's our first move. And then I'm kind of leaning towards grabbing a surprise... The hell is this called? Pythag's Piece. Why Pythag's Piece in this particular situation? Well, look at our team composition. It's... very high in damage. We have a solo lane Loki who's not building protections, he's building damage. So he's hitting abnormally hard for a solo laner. Which is fine. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But I'm going to want to capitalize on that, especially since Kuzumbo is building fairly standard form for a solo laner. So I am going to want to increase my allies' ability to heal themselves, which Pythag's Piece will give them. And that's going to overall suit them a lot better. And since I actually can because of who I am, bring some damage to the front here, that's also going to help me out because I'm going to be able to heal as well. And with my abilities actually hitting decently hard despite me not having much in the way of power, I actually will be able to turn that into decent amounts of healing, which is my goal right here. So they're pressing us. I don't necessarily think that's the move for them. Yeah, go right on ahead and use all that. And here's Bastet, which is fine. I accidentally killed somebody. That's okay. You can see the healing right there on Loki. You can see me healing him. And then we are now in a prime position. Now I just got a fear effect on him, which is pretty huge. We're gonna heal Loki up here. We're gonna try to madden her. That didn't work out so well, but he was still able to pick her up. I don't know what happened to Kuzumbo in the background. There he is. That was a huge prediction. That was fantastic. They still have their tower? Okay. I'm not sure we're in any kind of health condition to attack the fire giant, but I mean, if you want to try it. Now, you can auto-attack cancel with Cthulhu to some extent. You'll notice that I only really try it with Sanity Break, because Sanity Break is the only ability that comes out fast enough to actually make that a worthwhile auto-attack cancel. The Mire comes out too slowly for that to really count as an auto-attack cancel. And of course, you're not necessarily going to want to auto, dash. I mean, that doesn't usually make sense. Sometimes I'll accidentally do that as an auto-attack cancel when I'm trying to accomplish, actually just approaching the enemy or something like that. But you can do some auto-attack canceling. I have actually deliberately... Oh, they surrendered. I have deliberately auto-attack canceled into the dash a couple of times in 1v1 scenarios. Now, I'll probably, recap this episode really quick with at some point with Cthulhu. But again, I chose Cthulhu very specifically because I was concerned about the early game damage output of Nike, so I very specifically wanted a Guardian that could bring a large amount of damage in the early to mid game to kind of help her out there. So this is actually something I want to talk about, which is the decision-making process for who you support as, because I haven't really talked about this extensively to this point. And when I saw the Nike ADC, I saw an opportunity here to have a very important conversation about what support you should be picking, what should you be thinking about when you're picking a support. And I alluded, again, to this very specifically being Nike as a choice here. But then you might wonder to yourself, well, why didn't you just build Cthulhu hybrid like a solo laner? I could have, and there are situations in which even as a support I have built hybrid, which is to say a hybrid build being at least 2 items that give you power. The reason I didn't here is, well, while I chose Cthulhu due to Nike being chosen as our ADC, I chose my full tank build due to Loki being our solo laner. It's very rare for Lokis to build any kind of actual protections, even in the solo lane. This was no exception. That doesn't necessarily mean Loki is going to be ineffective in the role. As you can see here, this Loki was very good in the role. But it is something you need to be aware of as a support if you're going to be supporting for a solo lane Loki. And, of course, in the God selection screen, you can see what everyone intends to be. And I was wrong about Danzaburou and Nike swapping places. They didn't. They played Danzaburou in the jungle, which is fine. Again, Danzaburou can make for a good jungler. My concern was the Nike. Now, if I had chosen a much more classic support Guardian like Kepori, Ganesh, someone like that, well, Kepori actually would have been a good choice, but I'll talk about that in a bit. But I had already talked about Kepori, and I wanted to talk about Cthulhu, and this is a great opportunity to do so. So I chose Cthulhu because of his higher-than-average ability to do early to mid-game damage. And you might say, well, his flat numbers are a little low. Yes, that is true. But everything he does deals damage, which is what I was looking for, and does something supportive at the same time, which is also what I was looking for. I could have gone Athena, who hits a little harder. I could have gone Cerberus, who hits a little harder. but I didn't want to necessarily hit so hard that I was stealing her kills, which was very important. I just needed to do enough damage to eke her onto the sort of even playing field with Charybdis, which is, fortunately, what I was able to accomplish with Cthulhu here. Again, that early game fight where we were really slapping down Geb's health, and he had to stand back, that was really significant for Nike and actually set the tone for the dual lane in a very positive way for us. We needed that kind of advantage in the early game, and we got it, fortunately. And again, that was partially due to the fact that I was a higher than average damage support. This could have also been accomplished with Cerberus. This could very easily have equally been accomplished with Athena as well. I lucked out with the Cthulhu-Geb matchup here, actually, because there's not a whole lot of crowd control that Geb can prevent. You know, when Geb throws his Stone Shield on an ally, it cleanses all crowd control from them, but the only crowd control that Geb can actually cleanse from Cthulhu is very specifically the root from the mire. The rest of what Cthulhu does, Geb can't do anything with, so I lucked out with this matchup here. That was not a matchup in favor of Geb, straight up. And Geb also made a mistake with his starter item. It's my only criticism of his build, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But that is why I went with a full tank build on Cthulhu in this particular instance. Again, I was going to go on ahead and put Pythagram's Piece as my last item here, and that was specifically because of the high damage output of my composition. My team composition. And that would have worked out really well, but the enemy team surrendered because we were starting to snowball. Only the Bastet was actually doing really well, to be completely honest. And as a result of that, you know, they surrendered. But I was going to go Pythags as my last item, specifically to help my high damage allies heal even more. And that would have really put us into a really strong position. It also would have helped myself heal. I did talk about some other potential items. I mentioned Soul Reaver. Why didn't I go with this? Well, primarily because they only had the 2 tanks. They had the standard, you know, support Geb, and they had a solo lane Kuzenbo who was building almost full damage, which means that I really didn't need to necessarily worry about... I'm sorry, he was building almost full protections, which means I didn't need to worry about him dealing large amounts of damage. But on the other hand, that was it for defense. If they had... I could have probably still gotten away with it because ESET. But at the end of the day, I just felt that at that point in the game, ESET was too far behind to be a serious threat. Now, what do I mean by ESET? ESET provides a health shield when she uses the silence there, and increases allies' magic protections. So, you know, that would have made allies temporarily a little tankier, and Soul Reaver would have just punched right through that for the most part. They would have done a little less damage if they'd been under the effects of ESET's protection boost and shield, obviously. But overall, it would have been a really strong punch through of that. But again, they were behind at this point, because I hadn't even finished Pridwin, and we were already 4 kills up. We were 10,000 gold ahead, well, almost 10,000 gold ahead. We were so far ahead at that point that I really didn't see the ESET boosting their protections to the point where I would be able to really have as meaningful an impact with Soul Reaver. Basically, for the longest... You know, for the second half of the game, in my mind, my toss-up was between Pythag's Piece, again, my team composition can really put that to good use, or Soul Reaver. But, again, we were really pulling ahead at that point, you know, towards the end there, and Pythag's Piece won out because of that. Pythagram's Piece is something you build as a support. I really haven't talked Pythag's Piece, and that's kind of a slacker move on my part. Pythag's Piece is really good if your team composition is abnormally high damage, and you're ahead, okay? It's not something you want to build if your team is behind. It's not something you want to build if you have a lot of tanks on your team. It's not something you want to build if your allies are building tank, even though they're normally aggressive characters. It's not something you want to build, you know, in those kinds of situations. It's very specifically, you are ahead, your team hits really hard, your team is squishy as hell, which is exactly what I had here. Nike had splashed in some physical protections, but other than that, she had no magic protections. Loki, even as a solo laner, was not building anything in the form of protections, so it came down to me being the only real tank on the team. So Pythag's Piece helps my allies with their higher damage heal more, and it also keeps me alive, which is really important because I was the only genuine tank. Okay? That is the point of Pythagram's Piece. for support. That is why you want to build it as a support. That is when you want to build it as a support. I've seen people build Pythag's piece in the first half of the game. It can work, and it can work very well, but it's risky, because if you start falling behind, then that Pythag's piece and the healing it provides means almost nothing. In all honesty, it's a very risky thing to do, to build Pythags in the first 3 items. You really don't want to. I build it dead last if I'm going to build it at all, because I need my protections online first, so that way when I do heal, I'll actually heal back what little damage I've taken due to stupid high protections. Okay, that's really what I'm talking about right here. So, that's why I was going to go for Pythag's piece. Now, to kind of go back to picking supports, again, I picked Cthulhu to reduce damage for Nike. There are a couple of other very specific choices. I mentioned Kepori would have actually been a really good choice for Nike. This is because Kepori's Rising Dawn, the glowing ball that he throws forward, that reduces enemy physical protections, which would have been absolutely huge for Nike. It would have really given her an impressive advantage over Charybdis as long as I was in lane, and would have really been able to increase her damage output. And if I, kidnapped someone, which is what the name of that ability is, using, actually it's abduct, isn't it? If I'd abducted someone, and, gotten that silence going on there and all those other delightful things, that would have been absolutely fantastic for her, because she would have been able to full combo on them, basically. A lot of the time she was still able to, because Cthulhu was actually surprisingly very good at setting up with the Mire and his dash, which I can never remember the name of. But you've got absolutely fantastic synergy with Kepori and Nike, and we had, of course, the physical solo, we had the physical jungler. It would have been a really good matchup there. Same thing with Ganesh. Ganesh, with his ability to deal decent damage in the early to mid game, and his ult being able to reduce enemy protections and slow them down, along with his ability to silence Charybdis out of her, silence Charybdis before she gets into her whirlpool and basically keep her from whirlpooling herself, that would have been really impactful as well. So Ganesh would have been a really strong option here as well. I mentioned Cerberus. Cerberus hits like a steam train for a support. That would have been a great choice. Other good choices in terms of damage output and strong crowd control would have been Cabrakan or Bacchus. I mentioned Athena specifically because, again, she does deal impressive amounts of damage. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and... before I pop out and talk about the supports that would have been good here, I just want to mention that the Geb's issue was War Flag. His team didn't auto-attack enough to make this useful. In fact, only Charybdis auto-attacked. So this was kind of a waste for him, because this doesn't heal him as often as Sentinel's Gift does. Sentinel's Gift does. I don't know why I goofed that. Because this only heals you every 3 stacks. So every 3rd enemy, once you hit an enemy god with an ability, then you heal. I was healing for everything that died. Everything. Okay? And that's the difference there, and that's why you have to be very careful with the War Flag. War Flag is incredibly dominating if you have the right team composition for it. Geb did not have that team composition. Only Charybdis was benefiting from this. Bastet was using abilities, Kuzumbo was using abilities, Iset was going abilities. Geb himself has absolutely terrible auto attacks. Only Charybdis was benefiting from this. And as a result... well, only Charybdis was fully benefiting from this. Let me rephrase that. Geb was healing the health and mana of allies with this as well, because that is one of the things it does. But the attack speed and the movement speed... well, the movement speed everyone uses, obviously, but the attack speed is something only Charybdis cared about. It wasn't really being maximized. And as a support, Geb was sacrificing too much self-heal and gold gain that he would have gotten from Sentinel's Gift. He was sacrificing all of that for War Flag that only one of his allies cared about. Whereas I was gaining enough gold and health and mana to be able to stay in lane, keep on using my abilities without getting too concerned about my mana loss, and be able to stack me up in a position where I could better help my allies using Gauntlet of Thebes, using my abilities, using my anti-heal from Pestilence. And that's the difference there. But let's talk about other Guardians that would have been really great with Nike, because there's actually a decent number of them, but not all of them would have been really great in that situation. Basically, and again, this also partially has to do with how you build as well. Some of these build a little bit better towards that than not. technically, if you build any of these correctly, they would have worked really well here, but the catch is that Charybdis is ranged and Nike is not, so I needed someone who could force Charybdis to stay in one place from a distance. Alright, as nice as Ganesh would have been in this situation, I mentioned him earlier, that would have been a good matchup, he would have had to have gotten close enough to be able to dash at Charybdis first. Alright, Cthulhu doesn't have that issue. The Mire is going to root her from a distance, and she's not necessarily going to whirlpool away immediately, and if she does whirlpool away, then Nike's not sticking her neck out to do so, because she's seeing that, oh, this Charybdis is rooted, oh, now she's a whirlpool. The reason why it's so important to lock down Charybdis, or any ranged ADC, from range as a support, if you have a melee ADC, is to make sure that your melee ADC gets to the target. Alright, that is what that comes down to. I needed to lock her down from a distance, so that way if Charybdis whirlpooled, Nike would see it and wouldn't commit, because a melee ADC committing to a bad situation gets them killed, in a way that ranged ADCs don't have to worry about too much. This is one of the reasons why I picked Cthulhu. Alright, there are a couple of other really great options for the specifics of getting ranged here. I mentioned Kepori. Kepori is one. Get that root down, and then approach her as if to abduct. If she whirlpools, that's fine. If she doesn't, then Nike has basically clearance to attack, because you've got Charybdis in your claws. Alright, that's another option. Sylvanas, not as great an option as you would think. I'm just going to throw this out here. You pull her in, she whirlpools. And now, the nice thing here is that Nike doesn't need to stick her neck out for that, because you pull in the Charybdis is now in danger, so that's okay. It's not a bad combo there. But just keep that in mind. Same thing with Sobek, except he actually has to stick his neck out like Sylvanas doesn't have to, so that if your melee ADC just isn't going to commit, then this can get Sobek killed, so you really have to trust your melee ADC if you're going to pick Sobek. I didn't know this Nike from anyone. I've never played with this person before, so I wasn't going to risk it all with Sobek, which is another reason why I chose Cthulhu. And these ones stand out as being better than average, helping melee ADCs into getting in range of their, obviously, ranged opponent. And those are the ones I would recommend. You might think Atlas. Atlas has to be within a certain range of the enemy for that, and it's very easy for the Charybdis to predict this and whirlpool away, which still is okay. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Just keep that in mind. Aries with his chain, that is really good. Very specifically. Yeah, no, I could see, because if you throw the Astrolabe and she doesn't respond to that by whirlpooling, then you could pull her into the Astrolabe. No, he actually would have worked there. But that's what it's really coming down to, is, can I lock this person down from a distance? And a lot of these people, yes, but not all of them. But that's how you want to approach that. And you're going to want to use the Guardian that you are most comfortable targeting distant enemies with. It's one thing to know a Guardian, and it's another thing to say to yourself, well, I can commit on this. For example, I couldn't have used Geb here, because Geb wouldn't have been good at locking down from a distance. It's not something he does. Fafnir can. Fafnir would have been a decent choice, but the problem is Fafnir increases attack speed of allies with his second ability. Nike wound up building towards auto attacks, but it's not something I expect out of her, so I wasn't expecting to need Fafnir's auto attack increase. Turns out it would have been pretty nice to have, but hindsight is 20/20. Kabrakan is also, he brings the damage and he brings the crowd control, but he has a little bit of a hard time reaching distant enemies sometimes, at least in the early game, so that would have been a downside there. But yeah, I just wanted to have a quick conversation about this, because that absolutely is something you need to think about as a support. Is, okay, so I've got this crazy pick here, how do I react? And that's how you're going to react to a lot of the melee ADCs you'll probably see in your supporting career, so just keep that in mind. It can get very odd, but you have to pick a Guardian that can lock down an enemy from a distance, or otherwise bring them in and let your ADC wail on them. And Cthulhu's Mire gets to root her from a distance and allow Nike to play that safe. So, with that being said, thank you all very much for joining me. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, or requests, please leave them down in the comment section below. And thank you all very much for joining me, and have a great 24 hours.